Morning, Dee. So lovely to have you on the podcast.
Oh, it's so lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. When I was thinking about doing a series of women in wool, you were obviously on my list because you're so passionate about wool and sheep farming. And why don't you tell everyone the story in terms of why you decided to set up CLÖ FOLD and why it's so important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've always been inspired by the countryside. I mean, I spent a lot of my childhood in the Yorkshire Dales, obviously surrounded by sheep, and I absolutely loved it. And so I've always had this sort of connection. And when I was younger, I thought, oh, I'd love to be like an artist and paint sheep all day. And that was kind of where that love had begun. And then I met my partner who is a farmer. He's an arable farmer, but when he went to uni, he was learning about livestock as well. And then through his friends, I found out a lot more about farming. And then it sort of came to my knowledge maybe April last year that I thought, actually, so much of this wool is being wasted. I knew so many people that were burning their wool. I knew that farmers sometimes weren't getting paid, or they thought, actually, there is no use for my wool, so I'm not going to bother with it. And I thought, actually, there's so much pressure on farming across all of the industries at the moment, and anything we can do to help them is a bonus. So could we actually be using British wool, and could we, I know a lot of brands do it, but can we help grow that demand? And could it actually be woven? Because that was something I hadn't really seen. I've seen a lot of jumpers, I've seen a lot of knitwear, but I hadn't seen much woven. And I personally love tweed and woven products. So that was something I was quite excited to try. So the idea kind of started last April. And then I think it was around summer last year, I thought, you know what, actually, I could do this. And then I came to you and started this. But it means so much to me because I know how much farmers are struggling. There's so much pressures from the government, from the economy. So anything we can do to support them is a bonus right now.
So you're launching this week with a wool gilet as your first product. So that's your finished garment, is this fully traceable wool gilet. But do you want to tell us how that whole supply chain, how you've put that whole supply chain together from having the idea about supporting the farmers and using their wool to how that has turned into a finished product?
First thing I thought actually when I started the brand was, oh, so how am I going to start the supply chain? There's so many thousands of farms in the UK. How am I going to reach out to them and get their wool? And then it was through discussions with yourself that actually you led me to the British Wool Marketing Board. So I went to go meet them at their wool depot, which is incredible. Just bags and bags of wool everywhere, which is so lovely. And then once talking to them, actually I found out that it was what they're doing to support farmers is so important. They've been drumming up the demand for years. So through British Wool, they are taking the wool from farms. So they reach out to farmers, or farmers come to them and say, we'd like to sell our wool to you. They buy the wool. And then for their traceable wool, they pay the farmers 25p above auction prices for the traceable wool. So they bring in the wool, that comes into bags from the farm, and then that is graded by these amazing graders who have so much knowledge. They can tell a type of wool within like 7 seconds, and they can grade it into all these hundreds of categories, which is incredible. So that comes through the depot, and then that is then sold to the manufacturers. So my manufacturer is Moons, who are based in Yorkshire. So that then goes to them. They then weave and create the traceable wool herringbone pattern that I'm using. So I know that my wool has come from a farm. I know which farm. My customers will also be able to know what farm, because that information will be on a QR code on the garment and also on the website. So that just sort of builds that confidence that you are helping farmers. You know that they're getting that extra support, they're getting that demand. And it's just a brilliant thing that British Wool are helping me do. And they've been brilliant the whole time.
And that means that you can use the British Wool label in your products, can't you, to say it's traceable? How can the customer then trace it back and be sure that they know which farm it's come from, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, all the garments will come with a traceable logo from British Wool. That's their authentication stamp. So already by having that, you know that it's coming from a farm that's been looked after, supported, and the welfare of the animals is really high. So that's already great. Then British Wool have helped me by finding all of the farms that is on their traceable list and all the wool that goes to Moons. And then they've given me this data, which I've input into my website. So then from this, I created a QR code. So underneath all of the traceable labels on my products will be a little QR code, which you can scan with your phone. And then that will take you to my website where you can find the list of all the farmers and all of the, I think it's the farmer name, the region of the farm, and then what flock size they've got. So you really can actually like trace it back to the source.
And then ultimately, would the plan be to work with your own farmers? I know originally you approached some of your local farmers in Norfolk. How will that pan out?
So that's definitely something that I'm thinking a lot about at the moment. So initially, there's a farmer who lives down the road from me in Norfolk, and he has got a rare breed sheep that's native to Norfolk. And at the moment, he's burning the wool, and it's beautiful wool. It's really durable. It can be used across textiles and in furnishings, etc. But at the moment, he's not getting the return, or he's not working with anyone else at the moment. So that initially to me was like, well, I think it'd be lovely to actually almost create a farming cooperative for this brand, because farming really is at the heart of what I'm doing. And then since then, I've been having farms message me on Instagram actually asking, oh, we've got a farm. We would love for you to use our wool. So it's been really exciting. I think I've had maybe 5 to 10 farms reach out and offer their wool for me. So at the moment, it's kind of thinking, okay, in my next project, how could I work with farms to create this lovely sort of cooperative, almost a community, which maybe, we can make sure all these farms feel supported. Maybe they can support each other. They know that it's going to a good use as well. And then I also spoke to British Wool about this. So obviously I want to continue working with British Wool and to have that authentication stamp. So British Wool have been really supportive, and they said, if you want to use your own wool that you source yourself at some point, all you need to do is just send us some for testing. We'll make sure its origins, we'll check the welfare, we'll check its standard of wool. And then from there, you can also get the label to use as well. So yeah, it's definitely something I'm thinking about, hoping to include in the future. And I'd absolutely love to do that. I think it'd be so lovely to actually have this one-on-one with the farms as well, because I know how important that is to them.
Brilliant. Love it. Just going back to we were talking about your supply chain. So you mentioned Moons there as kind of the manufacturer. Just so it's clear to people, they are the mill weaving the wool yarn into the herringbone cloth that you're using for the gilet.
Yeah.
How about the rest of your supply chain? Because I know you wanted to keep the whole thing as local as possible and as British as possible. And obviously, I've been helping you do that. So like the beautiful buttons, for instance, and the gilet, the sewing of the gilet, how's that supply chain all fitting together?
The fabric comes from the mill, which is Abraham Moons in Yorkshire. Then for the buttons, for example, as you mentioned, these are from Courtney & Co. in the Cotswolds, and I've never experienced customer service like it. They have been incredible. So I've got Co Delight buttons. So these are using Irish dairy milk that is then hardened and set to create these buttons. So it's also lovely having this other connection to farming, and that is this dairy milk that's been used in the Irish farming industry as well. So then they manufacture the buttons in their factory in the Cotswolds. So that's really lovely. Then the manufacturing of the gilet itself is done by a lovely woman called Catherine at Blackshaw Clothing in Norfolk. So she manufactures all my gilets for me, and she's just been absolutely brilliant. She's so incredibly talented. So that's also made really local, and she's, I think, under 20 miles from where I live, so it's really nice. The lining comes from Essex. So every part of this is made in the UK. Also, I had the pattern cutting done in London. So I designed this myself, and then the pattern cutting, the fabric, the components, everything has been made and created in the UK.
Fantastic. And I know as well, because we've been working together and you've been so excited about this launch, and you've had such support from people, like you've just mentioned there on Instagram, the farmers getting in touch. I know you've already had so many people reach out to you saying, oh my God, where can I buy one of these from? What has been, do you think, the reason that the messaging that you've put out about this is really resonating with people, particularly right now?
I think in terms of the farming aspect, there's no denying that in the recent years, there's been this sort of maybe Clarkson effect from Jeremy Clarkson when he's been doing his diddly squat, his videos of Amazon Prime. I mean, they've really captured the nation's attention and heart for farming, which is brilliant. Whether you agree with him or not, it has been really beneficial for the farming industry. So I think since then, there's been this increasing interest in farming, but also it's been mostly in the food production and the drinks production, but not so much maybe in the clothes. So I think people are really interested about how they can support farmers more. I've been putting out there the facts, how I'm supporting farmers, how it's really key to my brand. It hasn't been something that I've mentioned once or twice as sort of a subtitle, if you like. It's really been at the forefront of everything I'm doing, and everything I'm putting out there has made sure that I'm talking about that consistently.
So going back to the whole conversation about wool, because that is the theme of this podcast series, in your opinion, why is wool such a special fibre?
I think because it connects with people both like physically and emotionally. I think, well, first of all, it's durable. It can withstand temperatures. It can withstand being pulled and tugged. It's breathable, which is brilliant. It's moisture wicking. It's temperature regulating. So with the gilet, if you're warm, then, well, if you're cold, it's going to keep you warm. And if you're warm, then it will cool you down as well, which is brilliant. I mean, it's a natural fibre. It's been growing on sheep for generations. You know, you've got all the different breeds of sheep and how their fleeces have adapted to the weather conditions, etc. So you know that actually this is a really great piece of material. And why aren't we using it more, really? So I think physically, it's just a fantastic product. It's got so much to give. There's so many different types of sheep fleece in the UK, and they've all got so many different purposes. I think it's something that I'm definitely thinking about is, I think, Blueface Leicester and Ryland are probably, and even the Romney wool as well, are great fleeces for clothing. But there's also so many out there that could be used and aren't being used so much. And I think I had a conversation with a farmer recently when I went to my local farm shop, and she was saying, well, she called the Blueface Leicester a hobby sheep because she thought she had more hard-wearing sheep and she wasn't getting much return for them. Whereas the Blueface Leicester, they were getting a lot more return because of how lovely their fleece is. Whereas meat sheep farmers, they aren't getting anything for their wool. But I do think there is a place for their wool, for maybe, you know, in your blankets, for example, or your carpets, or maybe your harder wearing tweeds, etc. There are definitely places for that. And I think something that I'm interested in is looking further at that wool type and how we could use that and support those farmers as well. But I also think that sheep are so lovely. Personally, I just love sheep. I think when you see them on the hillside, it's just very comforting, it's cozy, it's calming. They're such a big part of the British countryside. So even just knowing that your fleece is coming from these hills, just something so lovely about that.
Yeah, and also so very British countryside, isn't it? And I think that's probably why things like Claudia Winkleman on the Traitors wearing all these wool products has really resonated with people. Yeah. Probably not just in the UK, but internationally, because it's seen as a very British cloth.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that's why it's been like what I'm doing is really resonating so far on Instagram with my followers, because I think my brand I'm trying to make it feel very British and very countryside based, and having a lot of countryside people who love the countryside or are farmers following me. And there's so many countryside brands out there that are using synthetics and they're bringing in from overseas, etc. And nothing is made in the UK, everything is manufactured abroad, but they are countryside brands that are saying that we are from the British countryside. And I think for me, that wasn't good enough, actually. I wanted something that was for the countryside people, for the farmers, that was actually by the farmers and from the countryside.
Yeah, I just think that's absolutely brilliant. Really, really good. Yeah, so true. A very British brand about the British countryside with fibres that originate from the British countryside.
Exactly.
So why do you think that wool textiles are not used as much as they should be? In your opinion, why do you think that's the case?
Well, I won't pretend to be an expert about this at all, but I think whenever you do find a wool product in any kind of shop, if you just went to your local high street, it's usually merino wool. And it's a merino wool is lovely, but also it comes from Australia and further places. So I think it's become the standard in the industry that if you're going to use wool, then it should be merino, because it is a very fine type of wool and potentially finer than what we have here, such as the Blueface Leicester. So from that point, people and clothing brands are looking for softer fibres. And I think there's a lot to do, again, with like customers' perceptions that wool is maybe scratchy, etc. So they need to have the softest wool they can find, which is coming from abroad.
So the gilet is your first product, which I know you bought in a very small quantity. So people listening to this, by the time it comes out, you may have already sold out because it went just to your mailing list originally. So actually take note, if you're listening to this, get on Dee's mailing list for CLÖ FOLD so that you don't miss out for the next launch.
Well,
So that as well as the gilet, what will be the next product you're planning to bring out?
yes. So the next product is going to be some British wool, traceable wool welly socks, hopefully in time for April showers. So these are also coming from Laxton's, which are up in Yorkshire. So this is traceable British wool as part of their wool trace scheme. So again, I'll have a QR code, and then you'll be able to scan it and go straight to our website where there'll be the farm data provided by Laxton's. So then this wool is being taken to Scotland in Elgin, and they are knitting these welly socks for me as well. So these are going to be the next product, which I'm really excited about. After that, I've had a lot of requests for jackets in time for Christmas and autumn next year. So those are being designed in the pipeline. And then also I'm hoping to run some skirts as well this year.
What have been any challenges you've come up against? Because actually going from a standing start to launching a brand in 5 months is really amazing, especially with a full-time job. So what's helped that process, and what maybe have been any challenges that you've had to deal with along the way?
Oh, good question. Well, firstly, I'd just like to say that I feel like on the whole, it has been pretty seamless, and that's thanks to you, Kate, because honestly, with your help, it's been incredible, and it's been so easy to set up, really, because I've been able to come to you for manufacturers, for support. I think any challenges I have had was at the start, it was probably what was the best or the first product to launch. I think trying to find that sort of soft place in the market and what was the right first product was something that took a little while. I think starting with British wool and figuring out my supply chain, I wouldn't say that it was difficult, but it was definitely more of a lengthy process, trying to work out the supply chain and where the wool was going to go to, and then where the mill was going to be, who was I going to be working with. I mean, there's so many mills out there that are using British wool, but I was looking at traceable wool, so trying to hunt down and track where I could do that. I think overall it has been a really great experience.
I tell you what you've done really well here, though, and I suppose I've guided you on this, was launching with just the one product to start with, which is, in my opinion, is textbook way to do it, because it's better to have an initial launch where you build up that customer base as quickly as you can, launch with one product, test it, see what the market says, sell out, hopefully, and then layer on the new products, because that way you learn. And actually, I think what we've already learned from with me seeing your launch as it's been going, is that maybe we're even too cautious about how many you bought to start with, because the traction you've gained on social media and getting people onto your mailing list has been so quick that actually maybe the first initial batch was not even enough. But as I always say, it's better to sell out with the first batch and then move on to another product, or go back and buy more. And actually the advantage that you've got is because your product is made locally and your supply chain is pretty short, then you can deliver restocks within like 3 weeks, can't you? So anyone that is listening to this, if you have sold out by the time that this podcast goes out, rest assured that Dee and I are on it in terms of getting in the next batch.
Absolutely.
I think what people should bear in mind, that as well as launching this brand and having a full-time job at the same time, you're also not that long out of college. So it's really impressive that you have kind of taken the reins on this with such passion. And I think it really does show how passionate you feel about launching this product and supporting the farmers. You've got that real vision behind where the brand needs to be and what its reason for existing is. So, which I think is incredibly important right now. The world doesn't need just more products. It needs products that last and that are supporting skills in the UK. And you're supporting not only the sewing skills, the weaving skills, the spinning, the dyeing, but also the farmers and the farming skills. So that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as long as I can remember, I have always been creative, but even when I was younger, I was like, when I grow up, I'm going to start a business. It was just always what I wanted to do, and I could always see myself doing. And I think it just comes from that love of like the land. I think whenever I used to, holiday in Scotland, I used to love the colours of like the seaweed on the rocks, and I used to love the heather on the hill or the moorland up in North Yorkshire, etc. I think it's just come from that sort of love of really understanding and feeling grounded in that environment, and knowing that farmers are the ones that are supporting that, and without them we wouldn't have this amazing landscape around us. So I think the core ethos of this brand has just always been there, but this brand feels like a reflection of myself and my values and just what I want to and hope to see more of in the world, really. And just by eventually founding a farmer myself, finding him, mean that I can understand and learn even more about it. And it just made me so sad, like whenever I see the news saying that another pressure has been put on farming, or they're not, they're losing money. I mean, we saw that even on Clarkson's farm. I mean, whether I don't know how factually correct it was, but he was losing money, and a lot of farmers do lose money. And I think it just made me really sad. And as the years have gone on, I was just like, I want to do something, I want to help. How can I help? And then when this idea came to me, I was like, right, this is how I can play my part.
So you love the farms and the landscape, and then you landed yourself a farmer. Like, how did that come about? Did you specifically look to find a farming boyfriend, or were you just roaming in the countryside one day?
That's exactly what I was doing, yeah. Well, luckily, I mean, when I was younger, when you have those fantasies of like your dream man, mine was always a farmer. Every single birthday party I had as well, just as a side note, every single birthday party I had from ages 5 to 10 was at a farm. When like my other friends had been like princess parties, makeup parties, High School Musical parties, I was going to the farm. I loved it. So it's always been in the blood. But then luckily I met my partner quite young, actually, when we were at school, and I didn't know he was going to become a farmer. But luckily he did. So it's been lovely.
You recommended. So when he had careers options at school, you went, hey, darling, why don't you become a farmer?
Well, I think he's always been in the countryside. Like he lives like around like fields, etc. So growing up, it was quite obvious that he was going to do something outdoors, and he always loved animals. And he thought he was going to become a vet, and then he actually did some work experience on a farm, and he came home one day. I was like, I'm going to go to uni. He went to Harper Adams, and I'm going to go into agriculture. So I was like, yes, great.
Love it. I love that about the parties, that you've got to do an email blast about that. That's priceless. That's so good. I love it. Everyone else was having princess parties, and I was having farm parties.
No, it got to the point when apparently at one of these parties, or before that, one of my friend's mum and my friend had come up to my mum, and they were talking about my birthday party. And my mum said she can remember that my friend said, "Not another farm party." But yeah, I loved it.
Look where you are now. So Dee, where can everyone find you? How can they follow you? And how can they get on your mailing list so they can find out about when the socks drop and the socks drop? That sounds a bit, at least I didn't say when the skirts drop. When the socks land, and when your jacket and your skirt is available. How do they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the website, which is www.clofold.com, spelled CLOFOLD. And then you can also find me on Instagram at CLOFold, and Facebook and TikTok as well on at CLOFold. So there'll also be a little pop-up link or sign-up links all across my website. So if you just pop your email address in there, that'll take you straight to my mailing list. And I think something lovely about being on the mailing list, it's not about trying to sell you the products all the time. I try to pepper in emails every week that's about actually the farmers and the manufacturers, and putting those hardworking, skilled supply chains in the spotlight as well. So it's also a lot of storytelling, and it gives you a chance to find out more as well, which I think sometimes can be missing when you receive emails from places. So it's a nice thing to be part of, hopefully.
Fantastic. Dee, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. You've been amazing.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.